Reducing workplace bias. The shared information bias describes the tendency of leaders to only discuss information that everyone is aware of, rather than information that only some may be familiar with. Shared information bias can reduce the effectiveness of communication, creativity, and teamwork. The lesson and meditation highlight the importance of sharing information with teammates and consulting for effective leadership, and provide tools to remind leaders that sharing is critical for trust and authenticity. Good communication is an essential for any individual or organizational success. However, effective communication is not always easy to implement for a variety of reasons that include personal issues, interpersonal dynamics, the environment, and so on. There are several biases that impact the quality of communication, and specifically the sharing of information. Now, obviously, not all information needs to be shared with everyone in the organization. However, in a decision-making process, the major players really need to know the main factors, if not all of them, that have a bearing on decision-making and outcome. It is important, therefore, for all the critical information to be shared. However, there is the shared information bias, which describes a tendency for decision-makers to spend more time and more intense focus on discussing shared information, which everyone in the group is aware of, than unshared information, which only some people are aware of. This can have a critical impact on the quality of the decision and the efficacy of any subsequent policies. There are various reasons why there may be an imbalance between the sharing of common and uncommon knowledge. People might be very protective of what they know and be reluctant to share for a number of reasons, including confidentiality, power, protection of feelings, group dynamics, concerns about political correctness, appropriateness, and so on. It might also be that discussing shared information is easier and may seem more productive. Shared information is also a common denominator within the group, and there might be a natural tendency to focus on it for group cohesion. Now, the shared information bias might have minimal effect if the unshared information is not pertinent or very significant. However, one often doesn't know the significance of a piece of information until it is shared. Additionally, it can have a major impact if some members of the group simply are unaware of important information. It is also possible that the inability or reluctance to share information becomes known at a later date, and rightly or wrongly influences the narrative about how effective both the decision and the decision-making process were. If some members of the group feel that they should have been privy to critical information that was withheld, that will undoubtedly impact subsequent group dynamics. So here are some important considerations around the shared information bias. Do you make the effort to find out whether group members are appropriately informed? Do you take measures to ensure that all group members are appropriately informed? How do you know that you are appropriately informed? How can you ensure that you are? Meditation. We owe almost all our knowledge, not to those who have agreed, but to those who have differed. Charles Caleb Colden. The more extensive a man's knowledge of what has been done, the greater will be his power of knowing what to do. Benjamin Disraeli. In today's environment, hoarding knowledge ultimately erodes your power. If you know something very important, the way to get power is by actually sharing it. Joseph Badaracco. Sharing knowledge can seem like a burden to some, but on the contrary, it is a reflection of teamwork and leadership. Unknown. You may think that a certain piece of information is not necessary for others involved in the decision-making process. But then you are making assumptions based on your own perspective. How do you know how others will see and interpret the information? Perhaps your predictions about how others will use information is wrong. Perhaps sharing the information will lead to insights and perspectives that you hadn't even considered. We owe almost all our knowledge not to those who have agreed, but to those who have differed. An effective leader will not fear the perspectives of others. An effective leader will not fear the perspectives of his team. An effective leader will welcome the different perspectives of his team. Sharing knowledge can seem like a burden to some, but on the contrary, it is a reflection of teamwork and leadership. Sharing knowledge can seem like a burden to some, but on the contrary, it is a reflection of teamwork and leadership. Keeping knowledge and information that may be important to effective decision-making to oneself is not leadership. In today's environment, hoarding knowledge ultimately erodes your power. If you know something very important, the way to get power is by actually sharing it. The way to get and maintain effective leadership is by sharing important information, not hiding it. Effective leadership is about sharing. Effective leadership is about openness. Effective leadership is about trust. If you don't trust a member of your team, perhaps it's time to consider whether they should be on your team. Encourage your team to share. Sharing is what makes you a team. The more extensive a man's knowledge of what has been done, the greater will be his power of knowing what to do. Empower your team by giving them the opportunity to see information differently. Empower yourself by giving your team the opportunity to see information differently. Great leaders don't let their fears get in the way of decision-making. Fearful leaders aren't great at decision-making. A culture of sharing is a culture of respect. A culture of sharing is a culture of honesty. A culture of sharing is a culture of authenticity. Keeping knowledge and information that may be important to effective decision-making to oneself is not leadership. In today's environment, hoarding knowledge ultimately erodes your power. If you know something very important, the way to get power is by actually sharing it. The way to get and maintain effective leadership is by sharing important information, not hiding it. Sharing knowledge can seem like a burden to some, but on the contrary, it is a reflection of teamwork and leadership. Reducing workplace bias.